Alright, what's up you guys? Quick story time. It's been a few years since this story happened, and I figure it's past the statute of limitations where I can probably finally tell you guys what happened. So this is a little story of after I left grad school. So if you don't know, I was at UVA, University of Virginia, in the biomedical engineering department starting in 2017 in the fall. And then I was there for about 3-4 years. So if you're doing the math, towards the end of that was COVID. And we went in lockdown, of course, in 2020. And the program that I was in, at least for me, was half experimental wet lab cancer biology research, generating in-house data for this computational model of a particular phenotype of breast cancer that generally within the lab there were like a few different phenotypes. At the time I think there was like one or two main ones that we were looking at. The one I was looking at was like it involved like triple negative breast cancer. We don't need to get into those details. But of course my undergrad was applied math. So like I got hired on for my math, applied math, computational background. So I basically had no biology, biomedical expertise or experience when I started in the lab. And so kind of by design, my work was designed to be half computational, half experimental. Most everyone else's was primarily dedicated, focused on the experimental aspect, and then they would use computational methods as kind of like a means to an end, just the tools. So by the time COVID came around, it was like we're in lockdown, and then the building that the lab was in was connected by hallways to the UVA hospital. So of course, once COVID happened, it was like everything was just shut down. You're not going to be able to go into the lab and do experiments, obviously. And so you would think, oh, for someone who's, half computational, you'd still be able to get work done. Not the case. So looking back, think of the COVID time as like my financial awakening, right? I was like, oh, I'm not going to pursue a PhD anymore. I was like, what is this worth to me? I've lost a year of getting research done. And I would have had to pivot from biomedical engineering to something like applied math or computer science or like a physics department even, to like keep on getting work done meaningfully towards a PhD. I would have had to start over as far as taking like qualifying exams, because it was kind of becoming more and more apparent as the years went on that like, sure, I can wrap my head around all the biomedical stuff. Foreshadowing, after I left grad school, I worked at a company, developing biomedical devices. So like I still had expertise that was meaningful, able to apply that, transfer over into industry. But it was like, as far as a PhD goes, my passion is more in the math side of things. I mean, as you guys see on my channel, right? Differential geometry gang. And so I wouldn't have been able to make that pivot without basically starting over in a new PhD program. And that was after like 4 years. So that's kind of where I was at in 2020. Not only that, but the financial awakening part is that like if you're a grad student, you're making a grad student stipend, which at the time it was like $30,000. It still is probably $30,000 a year, which is like nothing. And I would see my friends who I graduated undergrad with or high school with who went straight into industry. And I was like, what is it really worth to me to earn a PhD at this point? So it was 2020 or 2021 rather. And I was in Virginia, and I'm originally from Colorado. And I was like, okay, I'm leaving the program, cutting my losses. You can't take away the experience between my 2 ears. I'd gained, a certain degree of maturity beyond where I was when I graduated undergrad in 2016. So I moved back to Colorado. I'm going to try to shorten up this story. Moved back into my mom's house in the basement. Me and her don't exactly get along. I already had my cat at the time. I got my cat Monkey in 2019 before COVID. And my mom and my sister who lives at home, they're cat people. So I was like, okay, my cat can move in here. Moved all my stuff back. Me and my mom don't get along. I got kicked out of the house. So I'd left the majority of my possessions at my mom's place, left my cat there, and long story short, I ended up living in this car, 2009 Ford Focus. So to recap the timeline, I left Virginia in April of 2021, and I was kicked out in the beginning of summer, basically. And so I'm going to tell you guys how I did this, okay? So basically, didn't have a job, used to be living in my mom's house, but then I was like, now I can't live there. I was living in my car. So what I did is I started driving for Uber while living out of this car. This is the key. I had some stuff from my mom's place that I was able to, when I was getting kicked out, I just put as much as I could in my car. What I needed, I got out of there. I ended up putting the vast majority, 99% of the stuff I put in my car in storage. So storage is $100 a month or something. So that's the first overhead cost. Second, I needed a place to shower daily because staying clean is super important when you're living in your car. You don't want to be an overt bum, okay? Even though you basically are a bum, you're not that many steps above living on concrete, as they say, but it's you're pretty close. You need to stay clean, especially if you're interacting with people driving for Uber. Okay. So storage, $100 a month. Planet Fitness membership, it's $20 a month. Next, driving for Uber. I would keep everything minimal, so I only have a few things in the car. I'm going to show you guys a few of the things. One, I have these windshield covers, okay? 2 of them, so that when I sleep at night, what I would do is I would put them in front in the windshield here so that they cover the driver and passenger side windows as well as the windshield. And then I had a towel that I put velcro on to go right behind the driver and passenger seats. And then I would lean my chair back here all the way, which doesn't go back all the way. And I would sleep in here, okay? That was my strategy. I would sleep in a Walmart parking lot. And then in the morning, I'd be a mile or 2 away from the Planet Fitness. I would go there at 4 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, work out, shower, get in my car, drive for Uber. And then this is the thing. The way Uber works, I don't know if any of you guys have ever done it before, is the night before you can reserve rides. And so a lot of the time, the people who are reserving rides for the very next day in the early morning, they need to go to the airport because the peak hours, for example, I'm in Denver, so it's DIA, okay? The peak hours are 7 to 8 or maybe to 8:30, 9, but primarily 7 to 8 in the morning. So I'd have someone who's scheduled for 5 o'clock or 5:30. So I'd get up early enough that I could go and work out and then shower and be ready going to pick them up by 5 o'clock, right? And I would get a ride guaranteed, reserved, going to the airport. That'd be 30, 40, $50. Because I'm starting on the west side of Denver every single day. The east side of Denver, Aurora, is kind of a little bit of a hood, and it would be more sketch to park there. And so that was kind of my strategy for that. But then coming back out to Denver, usually that early in the morning, there'd be an arrival. So it's right in the morning, right off the get-go, 2 rides, about $100. And every single day I get 380, maybe 400 miles per tank. And keep in mind, 2021 happened, so it was like the Russia-Ukraine war had just popped off. So yeah, there's the whole Straits of Hormuz, Iran war going on right now. So like gas has been going up and down. I feel like people maybe complain too much about gas, like regardless of your political stance on it or not, and how well the war is going, how well it's being managed. It's like the highest I saw gas go up to recently with the whole Strait of Hormuz stuff was like $4.80 a gallon. It just came back down to like $3.79 a gallon, maybe $3.60, a little lower. It might go back up again, but it was kind of already like that when the Russia-Ukraine war happened. But my tank is 12 gallons, so at a difference of around like $1 per gallon, it still is only like a difference of like $10, $12, $15 at most, from like just below $4 a gallon versus like peak war oil prices of like just short of $5 a gallon here in Denver, where it's like, if you're not driving for Uber every day, where you have to like refill your tank every single day, that's only a difference of like $10 per fill up. But if you're driving Uber every day, then it's like the cost does start to add up and stuff. I also realized that like, even for how much I was driving, the whole time in the year that I was driving for Uber, living in my car, I did like 20 or 30,000 miles over the year. But then I ended up putting like 50,000 miles on my car, because like after I would drop someone off, I'd have to backtrack to the specific Walmart I would camp out at. I would still have to like get to Planet Fitness, okay, whatever, 2 miles, but it's like that would add up on top, versus like if you're just like living somewhere, you could go out and do rides, just come back, and you're not like putting as many miles on your capital equipment. So, but I would get those, going back to my how do you pull it off. 2 rides in the morning that are airport trips, that's like $100. So you can cover with that like a tank of gas, and then getting like a big ass Chipotle burrito, or like loading it up at Panda Express. I'd get like the chow mein, and they're usually pretty generous at Panda Express. I would get double of the teriyaki grilled chicken breast, and they usually hook it up pretty fat there. It's like places like, I don't know, Panera or whatever, you know, some of those other little places, it's like you're not getting a lot of food for $15 or $20. But Chipotle, Garbanzo, Panda Express, pretty good. I would also sometimes like McDonald's get the like value meals, get like 2 McDoubles, 2 McChickens, you know, and like a large Coke, and that, you know, it sucks, but it's like, where are you going to keep food in the car? You can't really keep a cooler with food, because you're going to be picking up people driving for Uber, right? Okay, so you wouldn't do just 2 rides a day. You would try to get more, but by the early morning hours, there may be some people who are like going back from like a car shop, like they had Ubered to a car shop or drove their car there, and then they're like coming back, or like vice versa, you know what I mean? A one-way trip to and from an auto shop. But besides that, like people really don't need rides like in the middle of the day. The other thing is that I'm averse to driving at night, because you could be doing everything correctly, and then maybe you're driving in Denver, like some drunk guy could hit you. And my main priority is like, don't lose the car, because whether or not I'm gaining money or making money, it's like, that's where I'm sleeping at the end of the day. So like being super cautious is like a big thing. Okay, so one of the rules I had also is like, no getting intoxicated. I've never been a drinking and driving kind of person, but it's like at the end of the day, you're stressed. Some people want to wind down and have like a beer or something. It's like, you can't even have one beer and like sit in your car, because I did get the knock on the window a few times when I first started, because I didn't figure out where I was going to park. And that's also why I would sleep in the front seat rather than the back seat, is because then if you get the knock, you can just like turn the car on and drive away a lot easier. And you can just be like, oh, I was already like driving somewhere else, and you know, I just was like feeling drowsy, so I like fell asleep. So that was part of my plan. Okay, another thing you're going to need is an empty water jug to pee in. There are like no women who watch this. Because like, yeah, I'd be like driving around and my car is like a 2009. It's like 15 years old. So like, I didn't want to like turn off my car as much because then if I kill my starter, it's like another thing I have to worry about. That was something actually that did come up, which is the problem of repairing my car, but I'll tell that story in a sec. So more about the things you need. I already mentioned the windshield covers, water jug. Okay, you gotta have like right here, you can't really see it, but I've got a phone mount. I've got my phone charger. It just kind of goes without saying for like driving for Uber. Another thing, hand sanitizer. That was one of the hardest things like it was an unforeseen problem while living in your car, is that there's no running water. So like it goes with the empty gallon jug for peeing in, but there's like no running water to like wash your hands. So having hand sanitizer and just like every day I would fill up, I have my like liter green Gatorade water bottle, and then I would also fill up another gallon jug of water at the gym in the morning. And then when my liter water bottle would run out, I'd refill that from the gallon jug. Okay. Another thing that you're going to need that I need to say right away is a sleeping bag, because I mentioned I lived in my car, this car, in the winter of Colorado. So the lowest it got was like negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And it also like snowed. It would like be like, 6-8 inches would happen. I would like be snowed into my car. And so you definitely need like the scraper and the brush to like dig your car out of the snow after it snowed overnight. And that was one of the things that sucked, is like, if you're living in a house, an apartment or whatever, and you're driving for Uber because of whatever circumstances, if it's bad weather, you can just choose not to drive, and you can be like, oh, I'm not going to take the risk of driving in inclement weather. But it's like, if you're living in your car, you need the money to refill your gas every day. You need to make sure you have enough in the bank for like, paying your car insurance. Like for me, it's like $60-$70 a month, basically, it rounds out to. You need to be able to get like your daily Chipotle, okay? So it's like, one of the nice things about Uber is that you could cash out how much you made daily. You could do up to like 3 cash outs to your checking account a day. So that was like a big plus. You don't have to wait 2 weeks for like your cumulative paycheck. But I have a negative 25 degree Fahrenheit rated sleeping bag. So I know this is all over the place, but I was like kicked out in the beginning of summer. I was able to start driving and stuff, thankfully, like summer, late summer, fall, and then it gets to the winter, and I already had my sleeping bag. And I wouldn't have been able to live in the winter without my sleeping bag, because here's the other thing is like, it's possible to keep your car running overnight. Sometimes I would leave it on for a few hours, but like this car, yeah, it started to like fail on me a little bit. I'll get into how I needed to do repairs, but it's like not worth it, in my opinion, to run your car overnight and be living it, because your idle speed, I guess, from what I found out, is like 10 miles an hour. So if you have, let's say 350 miles per tank, then after running it for like 8 hours, that's as if you drove 80 miles basically. And that is what, like a quarter or a fifth of your tank then, for just leaving it on for like 8 hours, let's say overnight. So to conserve, I would run it for a few hours. And honestly, like falling asleep, I sleep better when it's like a cold environment. But like you have to keep your body temperature up. So the sleeping bag is like super critical. So yeah, the windshield covers, 2 of them, towel with the velcro, pee jug, water bottle, and the scraper and brush for when the snow comes. Then I would have a gym bag, of course, but I keep the gym bag and the sleeping bag in my trunk, so that way, like, I pick up people, they have bags going to the airport or something. You need room for that, obviously. You can't have, like, junk in your car also. So I think I've covered pretty much everything. Yeah, and then hand sanitizer. So the thing about repairs, though, is tires. So I hadn't gotten new tires for a while. I needed snow tires in the winter. That was like $400, where, you know, you've got to like either get like a loan on your credit at the tire place, or have enough of that like saved up from like surplus from your trips to cover snow tires. That was something I needed to think about. You know, oil change, being that you're putting on all these miles, 400 miles a day about on your car. It's like you go maybe 5,000 miles in between oil changes. It's like, that's like you need an oil change once a month then at that rate. I was able to stretch it out, but it's like still, you're putting the wear on your capital equipment. Next thing that happened was my brakes. My front brakes, I think, I wore the rotor down to the metal. And you could like hear like shh. And I did like several rides for like a day or two when it was like that. And it was starting to get sketch, starting to break. So I was like, okay, I also have to get new brakes on the car. That was like $500 to $750. Because then another thing that went wrong was like my motor mounts. So when I would also stop, you could like feel the engine, like the inertia would shake in the car from like accelerating and braking. So that was easily like $1,000. So those were all bad, but they were able to get fixed same day. What really killed me was a spark plug going out. So to kind of go back to the story, I got kicked out of my mom's house early summer. I bounced around at friends' houses, and I won't go into the details, but it was like sort of burned those bridges because it was like a rough time in my life. And, you know, so I was able to like kind of gradually end up living in my car, and I had to refine my system, getting all these things, the windshield covers, figuring out the blanket with the Velcro. I knew I needed like, you know, I never did Boy Scouts, but it's like Boy Scouts, they always say, keep a sleeping bag in your car, keeping the gym bag in the trunk, and then having that discipline to like get up, go to Planet Fitness, work out, shower, start doing rides right away. And then, you know, I was able to like either get loans or like put cash to like get those maintenance fixes of brakes, new tires. It was like, I want to say like New Year's. So like going from 2021 into 2022, I was trying to meet up with some people so I could like not sleep in my car when it was going to snow overnight. And I didn't even make it all the way there because my tires were bald. I like get off the freeway and take the exit, and then I'm going through the light and it starts going uphill, and it was already snowing, and my wheels were just spinning, and I wasn't having enough traction to like make it up that hill. So I had to pull in. Thankfully there was like a hotel parking lot where I was able to like camp out when it snowed over. That was bad. I made it out and I got snow tires, and I just didn't meet up with those people. But it's things like that. It was like, looking back on all this stuff, yeah, super stressful. I had great conversations with the people who I drove for Uber, conversations I'll remember for the rest of my life, where it was like heartwarming in that aspect and people were nice. But it was also terrifying when like your tires are bald and it's snowing and stuff, or your brakes are going out and you're like, oh crap, if I have to bring it into a shop and I have to leave it overnight, what am I going to do, right? What really did me over, though, the car maintenance repair that broke the camel's back, so to speak, was the spark plug that went out. So I was able to keep this routine, and I made it through the winter. And it got to like probably like March or April of 2022, and I was in the Walmart parking lot waking up in the morning. and I'm like trying to start my car, and it's just like revving, clicking, but it wouldn't like start. It wouldn't turn over. And a guy came over. Oh, that's another thing you need, jumper cables. I pull out my jumper cables, and this guy tries to help jump my car, and it's not starting. So he was like, sorry, man, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't know what to do either. So I'm like trying. And eventually, I guess this '09 Ford Focus has like an emergency mode or something where it can run on less spark plugs, but it was like top speed 20 miles an hour. And I drove back to my mom's house, hat in hand, and I was just like, look, this is the deal. I give up. And I was able to bring it to a shop, start staying in my mom's basement again. And that fixed, though, I had to leave my car for like a week in the shop. And they fixed my spark plug. It was like $300. Another thing that went out was like the radiator, for example. That was like another $500 or something. I'm probably not getting all the dollar amounts correct because it's been a few years, but it's like, that's the thing. Kind of, the maintenance, that sucked. Getting the routine down, looking back on all that stuff, that's like the easy part. Just getting your flow down of like, peeing in an empty bottle, pouring it out. Like going number 2 straight up. I would just like go in the side of the parking lot at Walmart, honestly. And I'd have these biodegradable wet wipes, like TMI, but it was like, that's a fact of like what I had to do to survive then. And keeping the gym bag in the trunk with the sleeping bag. Oh, and then I would only have a few outfits, and they'd be like business casual. I'd have like nice gray work slacks, nice blue work slacks. I'd have this like plaid blue button-down collar, long sleeve button-down shirt, another one that was purple, and a Patagonia gray vest. And then also during the winter, I had this like not good for winter, but like what you call it, like a windbreaker coat, a kind of like puffy windbreaker coat. And so between like wearing the Patagonia vest and that windbreaker, that was like all I had. I didn't have like a legit like ski jacket, so that kind of sucked. Didn't really need gloves or like a beanie or anything. It would have been better if I had a beanie, or like that windbreaker didn't have a hood, so that definitely sucked. But what really did me over was the maintenance that had to leave my car in the shop. Like if I couldn't have like hat in hand gone back to my mom's place, I had to drive like from north of Denver down south to like Highlands Ranch, being able to max go 25 miles an hour. And it was like something was wrong with my, like you could feel it. Like there was obviously a bad spark plug in my motor, so I couldn't go that fast. It was like really bad. And I was like kind of freaked out the whole time. If I wouldn't have been able to like grovel and move back in the basement for however my mom feels about me, I would have been like camping on the street for a week. That would have been like the worst. But all in all, it was a life experience for sure. And definitely an adventure in my late 20s, because I was like 26, 27 at the time. Like, I'm like revealing my age, how old I am, like being that I'm trying to like figure out how old I was back then. That was what, like 40. So I was like 26, 27 when that happened. But so I guess to recap, again, 2 windshield covers, towel with the velcro, and a sleeping bag to be in the front seat. Patagonia vest, windbreaker, no gloves, no boots even. I was rocking Crocs every single day, even in the snow. Crocs and socks. I would just wear like ski socks. And but what I was saying about the outfits was that I would also go to a laundromat like every 2 days, and I would wash all my clothes, my gym clothes, my clothes I'd wear when I'd pick up people for rides. I'd wash my sleeping bag, because if there's any lesson, it's like cleanliness, organization, discipline are the keys. So I hope none of you have to live in 12-year-old, 15, like my car's like 16 years old now, living in your car in Colorado during the winter and then being basically unemployed, just like driving for Uber to keep on being able to play the game of life the next day. Unforeseen circumstances, running water for like washing your hands. You don't realize how often you need to do that till you're living in your car. Another thing is that driving for Uber, taxes. Really, you should be putting away like a quarter of the money that you're making in order to pay for taxes, because when that came up, that, I've always gotten a W-2 beforehand and gotten a return, but then it's like being self-employed for the first time, you end up having to pay taxes actually, and you don't get a return because no one's like paying out to Social Security, Medicare, or whatever. So that was all rough. A lot of lessons learned. I hope I covered everything. The things you need, the routine, waking up in the morning, gym, shower, get on the rides right away. You got to make $150 a day, and you got to go when it's snowing. You've got to go to the laundromat every couple of days, stay clean. You have to be minimal as far as like what's actually in the car. That way also people don't think something's up. Some people probably surely thought something's up and could tell like this dude's camping in his car, but no one like said it to my face. But I like to think I'm like a cool enough guy that I was able to like, disarm enough people and like not freak them out and be like this weirdo who's like, oh, I'm van lifing, and just like weird them out that way. And it's like you can get away with it when you're a little bit younger. You're like when you're in your late 20s, it's like an adventure, like I said, versus like I'm never going to do that again. I'm thankful for everything that I have. It's like when you're in your 30s and you're doing something like that, that is kind of weird. So yeah, like the routine, being smart about your finances, and staying on it, organized, clean, disciplined. And yeah, I guess to round the story off, I only lived in my mom's basement for like a month, and then I got the job working at the biomedical device place, which I worked at for about 4 years up until last fall before my scientist gig. And that's pretty much where the story is at now. So just thought I haven't talked about I haven't talked about that on this channel, the whole like living in my '09 Ford Focus in Colorado in the winter while driving for Uber. But that's the story. Thanks for listening. If you have questions or I missed something, I don't know, comment below. But till next time.